PalWorld, the game that has been absolutely dominating online gaming discourse due to it selling millions of copies within only a few days, having those millions of people who bought it playing it consistently on Steam, and of course the discourse around the game's creatures called pals looking extremely similar to Pokemon to the point of being borderline plagiarism in some people's eyes. But to get the full history of where this game came from and a bit of the development behind it, Rock Solid posted this thread that explains it all. It starts out by him saying, "Thought I would make a thread to tell people more about the Pocketpair studio, aka the studio behind the newest hit game PalWorld, and give more insight on their previous works and what you can expect in the future, as there seems to be a ton of misinformation." Pock's first game released all the way back in 2019, titled Overdungeon. As far as I can tell, it's basically Slay the Spire roguelike RTS deck builder. The game was met with very positive reviews and good sales, and it's commonly described as fun, exciting, and dynamic. It has over time gotten a few DLCs, but nothing really of note. 1 year later, Pocket released their flagship title of Craftopia. Game was met with mostly positive reviews, but criticized for lack of content, bugs, and non-working multiplayer mode. The game is very clearly heavily inspired by games such as The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Genshin Impact, and to some degree Factorio. As for today, the game has mixed reviews on Steam, mainly because it seems that Double completely abandoned the project to focus on PalWorld. They outlined this in a blog post explaining that due to an engine change and financial problems, they had to make a choice between keeping Craftopia afloat or going all in on PalWorld. They chose the latter, though with the newfound success from PalWorld, there may be hope. Probably the most talked about and controversial game from their catalog, nearly 2 years after Craftopia, Double released a small-scale party game, AI Imposter, where everyone gets an art theme besides one person, the imposter, and has to follow that theme to the letter on vote and try to uncover who is the imposter based on the art they generate. To me, this game seems like a good idea made on a complete whim. Seems like something that spawned as an idea out of the whole rise of AI art at the time, but never really went anywhere. This brings us to PalWorld in 2024. Interestingly, many people may not know this, but this project was barely even made in time. Double was very low on funds as the game cost them nearly 1 billion Japanese yen, $6.3 million. Pocket took very big risks with this project, as themselves describe it, saying they got extremely lucky with their hires and funding, which makes the move to abandon Craftopia not really any less bad, but a lot more understandable. They also state that they are fully aware that their game will be compared to pre-existing game projects such as Pokemon and Ark Survival Evolved, and no, it does not use AI art. In conclusion, Double definitely has a history of taking inspiration from other pre-existing projects and trying to perfect them. By any means, there is nothing wrong with that way of thinking, and many popular franchises even today took inspiration from other pre-existing projects to get their foot in the door. Team Sneed then responds, "TLDR, I'm still playing PalWorld," and then Rock Solid says, "Pretty much yes. Enjoy it and ignore Nintendo cucks." And that's exactly what people are doing, as PalWorld announced that they had sold over 5 million copies in only 3 days. Yokai Watch News responds by saying, "This is fucking bullshit." Asmongold says, "The success of PalWorld proves that the only thing customers actually care about is a good game. AI, slavery, bestiality, copyright infringement, it's a video game. Those are pretend problems that people don't actually care about. Make good game equals people buy game." Since Potato responds, "All the hate it's getting really astonishes me. Some people are vehemently against more fun games existing." Luna's Ra says, "My first reaction was they copied Pokemon, but after I saw you play it and others, I realized this is a completely different game, and you can't argue with the sales. People want this, and they want it bad." Dan Peters says, "It's like Ark with a Pokemon coat of paint, but it doesn't suck." Mislead says, "Why do people assume there is the use of AI when there is no proof?" Tectone shows a picture of the Pokemon Vaporeon and says, "Yeah, and you can have sex with the pals too. Wake up, Nintendo. Hear what the players want." Asmongold responds by saying, "Imagine owning the IP for Vaporeon for over 20 years and still not making a dating simulator." Bep Delta quote tweets Asmongold's initial tweet and says, "When everybody realizes the opinions of social media lunatics are irrelevant, the world will become a better place." Rouse Hay says, "PalWorld fans are genuinely worse than Pokemon fans. Oh my god. Like the massive deflections they are doing to defend plagiarized AI slop is maddening. And now they've come full circle in harassing real artists. Genuinely worse than any Game Freak bootlicker I've ever seen." Captain Sucks replies, "Literally zero proof of AI, and the game was revealed 4 years ago before AI was even halfway competent." Lead Pipe Art responds, "So it was both made with AI and a stolen asset? Which one is it?" Eric Covington says, "To accidentally create a complex model mesh with so near exact proportions is practically impossible. To repeat that improbability throughout your roster doesn't pass the sniff test." And then he shows video comparing models from PalWorld to Pokemon, and it seems that they are very similar. Eric continues by showing this quote from an article that says, "You cannot in any way accidentally get the same proportions on multiple models from another game without ripping the models, or at the very least, tracing them meticulously first," one senior character artist told VGC anonymously, adding, "I would stand in court to testify as an expert on this." They explained, "To give you an idea of how impossible this is, sometimes we have to copy one mesh to another when we make sequels to games. For example, redrawing an NPC from one game to another, and then when we rework these old models, they only sometimes match this closely due to rigging changes that might need to happen. There are times when dozens of artists are given the same concept art to create a 3D model. For example, during art tests for jobs, I've seen 30 artists try to make the same horse using the exact schematics. None were as close to each other as these PalWorld models are to the Pokemon models. None. The silhouettes and proportions here are near perfect matches." Eric continues his thread by saying, "My intention in posting about this is not to aim pitchforks at the PalWorld team, but to offer a cautionary tale to would-be developers and artists. Please do not cut corners. You increase the risk to your project, your company, and the credibility of your teammates and peers. Do I suspect there will be legal action taken from Nintendo/the Pokemon Company? I would say it's likely, knowing how litigious they've been in the past, and knowing how strict our copyright laws are in Japan. Why haven't we heard of anything yet? They take time. For generic ideas, courts have applied a legal principle known as the merger doctrine, where copyright protection is not granted to monopolize ideas. However, specific expressions of ideas are subject to copyright protection. While Steamboat Willie's Mickey Mouse is now public domain in 2024, even up until then you could still create a cartoon about a talking mouse with gloves on. But once you drew those iconic 3 circles for the character design, you would have crossed a line. While a generic idea or functional rules don't have copyright protections, courts have demanded that a look and feel of a game can be protected by copyright." But Nui responds by saying, "Ah yes, when a wolf looks like a wolf is plagiarism." Cream Girl says, "Are you telling me they are stealing from Nintendo? Based." Andy Warski says, "Good, fuck Nintendo." Traget Design says, "Here's a take, no one cares. Play the game or don't. The end." Pupsker says, "PalWorld pulling off the old yoink and twist to make all the money. No real shock there." Bio says, "I'm interested in your perspective. Is this some sort of common sense test to show that this isn't an accident? I have been counting polygons, but that feels so easy to cover for. Like, I could just press a button in Blender and the meshes would be completely different." Eric responds, "I would direct technical questions like that to industry artist professionals." Cat Loveland says, "I'm not a 3D artist, but I really wonder why I see so many people going, well, all monsters will eventually look the same anyway in these games. A wolf is a wolf, etc. I can think of a lot of ways to change a wolf so it doesn't look like the Pokemon one, for instance." Black Sage D quote tweets Eric and says, "Make no mistake, a lot of these anti-PalWorld threads by these professional game developers that supposedly are working at these AAA game studios are jealous that this game has more success in units sold than the piles of garbage they slaved away for 5+ making." Metal Dragon Kid says, "Don't fall for the lies that PalWorld stole assets. This takedown of screenshots from those videos proves the PalWorld models are different." He then shows a PalWorld mesh which is orange overlapped with a black mesh of a similar Pokemon creature, and him pointing out the differences by saying, "These two meshes don't match in any way. The PAL mesh is just smaller and thinner, allowing parts of it to fit inside the Pokemon mesh. The PAL's mouth is much smaller than the Pokemon's mouth, while the Pokemon's head is bigger and rounder. The people claiming these models have the same proportions are just lying. With a still image it is clear they are two entirely different assets. There is no one-to-one overlap of any body parts. If these were the same model, they would fit together perfectly. The front view makes the differences more obvious. The Pokemon mesh has large ears, while the PAL mesh doesn't. The hair on the PAL mesh is also much longer. Large portions of the Pokemon mesh stick out of the PAL mesh, because the PAL mesh is just not the same." Metal Dragon Kid continues by saying, "The person that created the misleading anti-PalWorld video admits to hating PalWorld for glorifying animal abuse. This has nothing to do with plagiarism. Just hate a game for being too edgy." He then shows a pinned tweet from Biofrog that says, "I am doing this because I think it's disgusting how PalWorld glorifies animal abuse." Captain McQuack in response to Metal Dragon Kid by saying, "I'm a big PalWorld fan. Could care less if Game Freak feels the sting. But I'm also a 3D artist, and it isn't about about the mesh being the same. The two meshes are too similar to ignore. I'll tell you what happened. They took the Lex Ray model and made it better. They do line up. Metal Dragon Kid responds, I'm also a 3D artist, and the meshes don't line up at all. The PalWorld mesh is smaller, causing parts of it to fit inside the Pokemon mesh. There's no part that overlaps perfectly, only their height is similar. Metal Dragon Kid then tweets out, don't believe the lies that PalWorld is using AI generated art. Liars are claiming that PalWorld used AI art based on a post made by their CEO. The problem is he was talking about BuzzFeed using AI to create Fakemon, not Pocketpair's staff. He then shows a tweet from Max Wolf on December 14th, 2021, where he says, I forced a bot to look at every Pokemon and told it to generate its own. Here are the results. This isn't a joke. That's actually how I made these. And then the CEO of PalWorld quote tweeting him and saying, it seems that BuzzFeed engineer Max Wolf automatically generated it using a method called Rue Dali. And then Metal Dragon Kid shows this tweet from Zaytree that says, here's the CEO of Pocketpair talking about using AI to bypass copyright, generating Fakemons with it, calling AI Art Imposter a real-time image generation game, and being excited for games powered by GPT-4. Metal Dragon Kid continues his thread by saying, this is another example of a person spreading lies about PalWorld. I am 3D model artist, and what they are saying here is impossible. If models were the same, they would have to have the exact same number of vertices. The body of the Pal is different, so that's not possible. He then shows this tweet from someone who calls themselves a Nintendo lawyer, saying, PalWorld is fun, the creatures are cute, but they stole assets. They should not be doing this. It's not proper dev ethics. That is all. I'm not saying the game is bad. I am saying the devs did something bad. When you overlap the 3D models, the polys are the same. Q responds by saying, I'll put this here too, showing an excerpt that says, the Pocketpair team claims that Pokemon was not one of their main inspirations. According to CEO Takoro Mozobi, the concept of PalWorld is based on Ark Survival Evolved, which also had monster companions and dinosaurs. The survival mechanics and in-game tasks were inspired by Rust, while the Dragon Quest series influenced the creature designs. Early in development, it was decided to move the game from Unity, which powered all of Pocketpair's earlier projects, to Unreal Engine. The game's budget exceeded 1 billion yen, and the company hired over 40 additional employees. Metal Dragon responds by saying, the fact it combines Ark and Pokemon is why I love it. It takes everything I love about Ark and everything I love about Pokemon and combines it together. It is my dream game. Kletzy quote tweets Metal Dragon's initial thread and says, for everyone trying to dogpile on PalWorld claiming it's using AI, it's not, laughing my ass off. There is zero solid evidence they are. Steam legally requires developers to disclose AI use now, by the way. People are just mad it's doing so well. Mischief quote tweets Metal Dragon and says, the level of lies and general slander being thrown at PalWorld because Nintendo fanboys can't handle Pokemon having competent competition is absolutely ridiculous. Community Notes has been lacking on a lot of the posts spreading misinformation as well. Toasted tweets out that PalWorld already has a Pokemon mod, which I can't show you unfortunately, as Twitter has removed this video in response to a report by Nintendo. Toasted responds to this by saying, Nintendo has come for me. Please leave me in your thoughts and prayers. And then Dextero quote tweets that and says, Nintendo appear to be copyright striking videos of Pokemon mods for PalWorld. Lord Bugs says, they got time to copyright random modders instead of making a good game. Opera GX says, only Nintendo can strike even the video showing a mod for a different game. Jaylan responds, Opera, don't make me love you less. It's clearly their content. Xander responds, free mods in another game is fair use. The Macho Man responds, no, laughing my ass off. The mod was using Pokemon models, which is Nintendo's IP. Yivin Gix responds, okay. It's still a mod. No money is going to be made of it. And then Kai responds, that's not the only thing to account for. Money is one part of how their IP is represented is another thing. In this case, their IP is represented in a violent manner, and that in itself is enough to order a takedown. Ender responds to Dextero by saying, y'all left out the part explaining that he paywalled the mod. Nintendo would have been more likely to ignore it if he didn't charge money for access to the mod. Dextero also tweets out, currently we are receiving slanderous comments against our artists, and we are seeing tweets that appear to be death threats. PalWorld CEO and Takaru Mizubi responded to the allegations that PalWorld copied 3D models of Pokemon. TM responds by saying, death threats over a game? What a bunch of babies. X-Avenged X-Wolf X says, some of y'all get way too serious over a game. Zach says, Pokemon extremists, showing a gif of a guy having a tantrum. Ocho says, they did what Nintendo wouldn't. and look how freaking awesome it is. Lilith Lovett responds to Dextero by saying, imagine sending death threats against artists in order to defend the honor of Game Freak / Nintendo. Leave the multi-billion-dollar company alone. Boogie2988 says, Pokemon fans trying issuing death threats to devs to protect an imaginary electric rat was not on my 2024 bingo cards. Dextero also tweets out, PalWorld has overtaken Counter-Strike's all-time peak player count record on Steam. PUBG is still first with 3.5 million concurrent players. Ray Tuxinu responds by saying, call me crazy, but you don't get these kinds of numbers without getting something right that has large appeal. Otaku Raku says, love it or hate it, PalWorld's success shows it's what a lot of gamers want. They then show this image of Soldier Boy from The Boys, representing Pokemon, saying, you're just a cheap fucking knockoff, to Homelander representing PalWorld and him saying, oh no, I'm the upgrade. Omni says, the PalWorld versus Pokemon discussion is so stupid, because if you were a true Pokemon fan, you'd want PalWorld to be crazy successful, so Game Freak will finally get off their thumbs and do something legendary. Competition is healthy, it's a win-win for consumers. Phase Your Rage responds, yup, Pokemon has been shoving absolute dog shit down our throat, and we've been taking it, and there's delusional peons that actually defend it. Sickening. Omni responds, facts. I respond to Omni by saying, Pokemon desperately needed competition. The quality of the mainline games has been unacceptable for years, but they don't improve it because it keeps selling well, since people don't have any alternative for a modern Pokemon experience. Fleas says, competition is one thing, blatantly stealing is another. With that being said, I'll still play. Fipsy says, I agree 100%. Plus, to be honest, PalWorld isn't really Pokemon. Anyone that's played it probably thinks it's closer to Ark or Rust than it is Pokemon, but you capture creatures, so Pokemon. I love Pokemon as a franchise, but the game side of the company needs to do a better job. We shouldn't have a game in pre-release that runs better than Pokemon that has been out for over a year at this point, and in its 9th generation. They've had 6 years to get used to the Switch's graphical style, and still cannot make a game that doesn't run bad. I hope this is a wake-up call to them. I want Pokemon to do well, but competition is good. Fleecy quote tweets Omni and says, I promise that sending Game Freak the message of, people will literally buy shovelware as long as we market it right, is not going to end how you think. Dottalol responds to Omni by saying, my god, this discourse is not happening because defensive Pokemon fans want Pokemon to stay at the top. The issue is that PalWorld is plagiarizing Pokemon designs. I don't understand why this narrative of whiny Pokemon fans is so popular, when this so clearly isn't the root issue. Guess what? I also want there to be more monster taming games. I love this genre. If PalWorld just didn't do shady things, I would not have any problems with it. After some of these responses to Omni's tweet, Omni made a new tweet saying, jokes and fun discourse aside, I'll be researching into plagiarism and AI usage from PalWorld for the next video. Lots of misinformation being spread. Hard to tell what's true and what's false at the moment. Griefing Golem responds, I'm glad you are, because it felt like you weren't taking people's actual issues into consideration about why they found the game problematic. A lot of people who just want to enjoy the game deflected saying it's just Pokemon defending, when it was more about actual theft. Omni responds, I just troll in Goblin mode on Twitter like always, but it feels like my tweets recently keep leaving my intended base. I can't just goof around like I used to. Mudahar says, crazy how some people on this app still can't realize they can play 2 games instead of 1, laughing my ass off. Chilled Chaos says, reading into the PalWorld AI and CEO debacle, I'll probably stop playing, mix of boredom and morality, but telling creators to do better in their comments when they weren't even aware comes off as so fucking snooty. Wait until I tell you what CEOs of other companies are doing. Plus, harassing / annoying others, or even grandstanding, tends to have the opposite of the intended effect. If anything, you are spending your time and energy to spread awareness about the game's existence. While I think PalWorld was going to sell a lot of copies regardless, it's Pokemon. Some of those copies are definitely from users learning about the game because of people trying to stop sales. If you keep it in the news, it's going to sell. Hogwarts Legacy, the Streisand effect. Synth Potato shows this image and says, PalWorld discourse in a nutshell. Hey, my game is similar to yours. Yeah, let's call them Souls-likes. Hey, my game is similar to yours. Yeah, let's call them auto shooters. Then a guy with PalWorld. Hey, my game is similar to Megan Ablaze responds, comparing the discourse between Nioh and Dark Souls, 2 entirely different games with common elements, with that of PalWorld where there are blatant copies of assets is funny. It's not about the game itself, it's entirely about the potential use of AI and shady art. Synth Potato responds, potential use of AI. Meanwhile, there's zero proof that AI was ever used in PalWorld. Y'all really getting mad over delusions, laughing my ass off. Star Ignite responds by saying, go back to school and learn reading because you need it. Since Potato then responds by showing this reply by Scotsman Scott, where he says, "You are a potential rapist. Don't ask me for evidence though. That's just what potential means." Sean Murray, who created the game No Man's Sky, tweets out this image of an old man saying to Nintendo, "Another million people have purchased PalWorld." Submit2 Media shows that Pokemon and PalWorld both have P in their name and says, "Has anyone else pointed this out?" Pipkin Pippa responds, "Quick, someone overlay them. We gotta look closer." Caden says, "Damn it, they are copying. This is disgusting. I will be uninstalling the game and whining all day on Twitter about this." Satan Vinit says, "The pointy part is 100% AI generated." Magigi responds, "No shit, Sherlock. What's next? Pokemon used guns first? Because Team Rocket had it in an episode." Obi Kiwami says, "I can't believe PalWorld would blatantly plagiarize another artist's work like that, comparing the Electric Pal to Chris Chen's drawing of Sonic 2. And that is about it that I want to read so far for the PalWorld discourse. Obviously, this game is massive. Everybody's talking about it. There's hundreds of thousands of tweets on it, so I didn't cover all of it in this video. If you'd like me to continue reading some tweets about PalWorld, maybe some more of the memes and funny tweets rather than the arguments of plagiarism and AI, since I already covered it in this video, be sure to let me know by leaving a like and telling me in the comment section below. And while you're at it, why not just give your opinion on this topic in general? Are you on the side of saying PalWorld is unethical? Do you think they did nothing wrong? Or any other opinion in between, I would love to hear. To me personally, while it's impossible to deny the similarities between the Pokemon designs and the PAL designs, I do think they are different enough to not be considered plagiarism, just heavily inspired by the same design philosophy that Pokemon have. And there are a couple creatures in the game that aren't really in Pokemon at all. And with how many Pokemon exist, I think there's like over 1,000, I feel like it's impossible to not have some overlap with a lot of the creatures, especially if you're using a similar design philosophy as the Pokemon to create these PAL creatures. But I don't think Pokemon should have ownership over creature stylization that they came up with and introduced into the gaming industry. But at the same time, they're clearly really similar to Pokemon, and with the ball catching mechanics and everything like that, it's no secret that without the existence of Pokemon, PalWorld wouldn't exist. That being said though, I think it's stupid to call this game shovelware. I was actually kind of surprised when I saw that tweet. Shovelware is supposed to describe games like M&M's Racing for the Wii. Games that are just made to fill up shelf space for kids to potentially ask their parents to buy. Whereas PalWorld, while not a finished game because it's in early access, is a game that plays very well, is not shovelware by any means. I mean, you're looking at gameplay footage of it right now. Some of the mainline Pokemon games look more like shovelware than this game. Not saying they are, but that term was very poorly used, and I don't agree with the sentiment that this game is low quality. But that's just my opinion. Again, I'd love to hear yours in the comment section below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video.